Hi, today I'm going to talk about an event that most people have never heard of, but it changed the entire world. I'm talking about the Siege of Mecca. It happened in 1979. That's the same year as the Iran hostage crisis and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. But this one, it happened inside the holiest site in Islam. A group of armed men took over the Grand Mosque in Mecca. They held it for 2 weeks. Hundreds of people died, and the aftermath, well, it helped shape the world we live in today. From the rise of al-Qaeda to Saudi Arabia's conservative turn. So, let's break this down. What was the siege, why does it still happen, and why does it still matter? First, let me explain what I mean by siege. A siege is when a group of people takes control of a building or a city and refuses to leave. They block the exits, they fight off anyone who tries to come in, and the people inside are trapped. In this case, the building was the Grand Mosque in Mecca, the most sacred mosque in the entire Muslim world. Millions of Muslims travel there every year for a pilgrimage. It's where the Kaaba is, the black cube that Muslims pray towards 5 times a day. So imagine that, the holiest place on earth turned into a battlefield. On November 20th, 1979, a group between 200 and 500 armed men took over the mosque during dawn prayers. They chained the gates shut. They had guns, grenades, even swords hidden under their robes, and they took in hostages. And then they made an announcement. They said that the end of times had come. They said their leader was the Mahdi, a prophesied figure in Islam who's supposed to appear before the day of judgment to bring injustice to the world. Now, if you're not familiar with the Islamic prophecy, the Mahdi is a big deal. A lot of Muslims believe he will come at a time of great crisis, but here's the thing. Juhayman, the guy leading the attack, decided that his brother-in-law was the Mahdi. That was not a widely accepted belief, so right away, this was a fringe, radical group, not mainstream Islam. So who was he? His name was Juhayman al-Utaybi. He was a Saudi citizen from a poor Bedouin family. He had served at the National Saudi Guard. He was a corporal, which means he had military training. He also studied at a religious school in Riyadh, though he never finished. He became convinced that the Saudi royal family was corrupt. He thought that they had sold out Islam for money and Western alliances. He wanted to overthrow them and establish a pure Islamic state. Now, Juhayman wasn't alone. He gathered followers, mostly young men, some former soldiers, some religious students. They trained in the desert, they stockpiled weapons, smuggled from Yemen and from the National Guard, and they chose the first day of the Islamic year, 1400, to strike. That day was symbolic. According to prophecy, the Mahdi could appear at the turn of the century. Juhayman wanted to force that prophecy to come true. So, what actually happened during those 2 weeks? I'll show you a timeline in a second, but here's a short version. The Saudi military tried to storm the mosque. They failed, they tried again, they failed again. The rebels had taken over the minarets, those tall towers, and turned them into sniper positions. They also controlled a maze of underground rooms beneath the mosque. For days, the government couldn't break through. But then secretly, the Saudis asked France for help. 3 commandos from an elite French unit called the GIGN flew to Mecca. They didn't fight, but they advised, and they brought a special type of tear gas. The plan was to pump gas into underground chambers. The gas wouldn't kill anyone, but it would knock people out. Then Saudi soldiers could go in and clear the building, room by room. It worked. By December 4th, the siege was over. The Mahdi, Muhammad al-Qahtani, was dead and Juhayman was captured. And here's a timeline that I made of the 1979 siege of Mecca. On November 20th, 1979 was the start of the siege. On November 20th to 24th was when the Saudi National Guard launches multiple frontal assaults. Between those times, from November 20th to 24th, was November 21st, was when the US Embassy in Jeddah sent urgent cable to Washington identifying Juhayman and describing the situation. On November 23rd was when 3 French GIGN commandos arrived in Mecca to advise Saudi forces. After that, November 26 to 30, Saudi forces pumped non-lethal tear gas into the mosque's underground chambers and cleared the building room by room. And finally is when the siege ends on December 4th, 1979. In the next clip, I'll be showing a video. What you're seeing here is the Grand Mosque during those 2 weeks. The Saudi military surrounding the holiest site in Islam. The smoke, the chaos, these images were surpassed for years.
Up to 500 militants attacked the Grand Mosque al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, Islam's holiest site. Led by a 43-year-old religious fanatic, one Juhayman al-Utaybi, the militants occupied the Grand Mosque for nearly 2 weeks, in the process shaking the Saudi regime to its core. The ensuing gun battles and attempts by Saudi security forces to retake the mosque officially cost over 255 lives, including 127 members of the security forces.
This next clip that we're gonna see right now is a chant. Listen. At the end, you heard the words, هذه الإنذار. It means in Arabic, this is a warning. That chant tells you everything you want to know about the rebels' mindsets. They weren't just fighting for land or power. They believed they were delivering a message from God, a warning to the royal family, and a warning to the world. 1 month later, January 9th, 1980, Juhayman and 63 of his followers were publicly beheaded in 4 Saudi cities: Mecca, Medina, Riyadh, and Dammam. The government hoped that would be the end of it. But here's where things get really important. After the siege, the Saudi royal family was terrified. They thought another uprising could happen at any time, so they made a deal with the country's conservative religious leaders. They said, "We'll give you more power, and you help keep the population under control." And what did that exactly look like for Saudis? The religious police were expanded. Women were required to cover more strictly, public entertainment were restricted, and Saudi Arabia started spending billions of dollars to spread its ultra-conservative version of Islam, which is Wahhabism, to mosques and schools all over the world, from Pakistan to Bosnia to the United States. And then a young man named Osama bin Laden watched all of this, and he was inspired by Juhayman. He saw that a small group of believers with guns could shake a powerful government. Many experts say that the siege of Mecca was direct exposure to al-Qaeda and ISIS. So that was the siege of Mecca, a 2-week battle inside Islam's holiest site. It began on November 20th, 1979 and ended on December 4th, 1979. And when it was over, the official death toll was 255 people. But independent estimates suggest that the real number is very much higher and possibly over 1,000. The Saudi government has never released a full accounting. Juhayman al-Utaybi and 63 of his followers were executed on January 9, 1980. The government hoped that would close the book, but it really didn't. According to the sources I used for this video, the siege had 2 major consequences. Firstly is inside Saudi Arabia. The royal family, fearing another uprising, gave more power to conservative religious authorities. The religious police were expanded, women were required to dress more strictly, public entertainment were restricted, and this shift is documented by scholars like David Commons and Pascal Minoret. Second is outside Saudi Arabia. The siege inspired a new generation of jihadists. According to Thomas Hegerhammer's book, Jihad in Saudi Arabia, the siege became a rallying cry for those who believed the Saudi monarchy was corrupt and that armed struggle was justified. Journalist Yaroslav argues that the siege was a direct persecutor to al-Qaeda. Osama bin Laden, then a 22-year-old, reportedly admired Juhayman's rejection of the royal family. The siege also changed how Saudi Arabia projected power. The government began spending billions of dollars exporting its ultra-conservative Wahhabi ideology to mosques and schools around the world, from Pakistan to Bosnia to the United States. and this is documented in multiple sources including Hegerhammer and Lacrosse 2007 article. The Saudi government tried to suppress information about the siege. Photographs were confiscated, news reports were censored, and the mosque was quickly repaired, and for decades the event was largely forgotten outside of specialist circles. But the sources agree, the siege of Mecca was not an isolated incident, it was a turning point. It changed Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, because of its oil wealth and its religious influence, changed the world. The chant you heard, هذه الإنذار, this is a warning, was not just words. It was a declaration, and 43 years later, its consequences are still unfolding. Thanks for watching, and all more sources are listed at the end.